All right, there we're live on YouTube. And Lin Castaldo, this mic is all yours.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. We are reading The Annihilated Self, Consumed by the Fire of Love by James F. Twyman. So we are on chapter 8, Shadow Boxing, which is page 70 if you're joining there. And I'd like to just start off with a moment as Joel Goldsmith was talking about, seek the kingdom of God. Just sink in to that prayer, the presence of God. Get that feeling of consciousness of Christ, that awareness that He's always here, He's with us, He loves us. Thank you. Thank you. I've never heard that with Joel Goldsmith before, so I liked him before, and I remember doing his book, but we'll have to revisit. I know you're doing it too. But this is Twyman, The Annihilated Self, a soul consumed by the fire of love. And as Joel was talking about forgiveness, it was like, oh yeah, as we have these arguments going, let it go, let it go. As always, please share. You can share on the screen or you can just unmute yourself. So this is what Soul says. Thank you, love. I won't continue asking what will happen next. I no longer fear what I will become. Let it be nothing. Let it be you. And I was just contemplating this last night. The thought of the unknown, of just allowing and not being afraid to follow that inner intuition. And this is Love's reply. Yes, my dear soul, and let it be you as well. In your nothingness, grace will rise like the ocean tide. You will not know how or why this happens, only that it does. You may hear so-called learned people explain how the tides are ruled by the moon or other heavenly bodies, but still, only one will fill your mind, the call to love all, for all is love. Yeah, the call to love all. And as Joel was saying, even when it's not easy, even if all I can say is, Father, forgive them, for they are hurting themselves. Wow, isn't that powerful? Pray for our enemies, make peace with our brothers, make peace within our own mind. Help me make peace with my own mind. Learn forgiveness. So Soul says, I can see how this brings me closer to others than ever before. Or maybe it's better to say that I feel this closeness, not that I see it. How can I possibly see what is invisible to my eyes and to my mind? And how can the love you describe see what has never been real? This reminds me of the struggle I felt as a young boy, learning to fight my own shadow. I remember my father buying me a pair of boxing gloves because he thought it was time for me to learn how to defend myself. He took me to the basement and set up a bright lamp so the light would shine directly on the wall. Then he had me stand between the lamp and the wall and do battle with the shadow I saw there. Every punch I threw or tried to block was instantly countered by my shadow self. It was a battle that was never real, one I could never win. Is this similar to the situation I encounter when I try to solve the problem of separation within the dream of separation? What a fantastic physical visual. I never thought of the shadow work being like that, but think of it. Yeah, we're fighting our own shadow. And you can see how that shadow just keeps surfacing. Unless it's cloudy, then there's no shadow. Um, we used to have to check out our shadow as a science project. And you had to make sure it wasn't cloudy, and you had to make sure it was certain times of the day. Well, it's cool how things come back, right? Solve the problem of separation. So love returns. Oh, beloved, yes, you touch the tender root of it. That memory, so innocent, so human, reveals more than 1,000 sermons ever could. You stood between the light and the wall, and in doing so, you cast the shadow. And then, with all the bravery of a child wanting to please, you fought it, not knowing the shadow could never strike first, not knowing the light was always behind you, never asking you to fight it. Wow. Just take that visual in right now. You cast the shadow. We're casting the shadow. But the shadow can never strike first. And the light was behind, never asking you to fight at all. This is exactly how the soul struggles when it tries to resolve the illusions it perceives using the tools of illusion. It throws punches into a silence that never fought back. And the more effort, the more shadows arise. It is not evil that resists you, dear one. It is your own outline, our own beliefs, our own projections. That silence that never fought back. Maybe that's why the silence is so important, to step into that quiet, that silence, even though that silence feels like it's defeat, at least for me at times anyway. Soul replies, then what of all the striving? The sacrifices I made in the name of holiness, the disciples I practiced to keep the shadow at bay, were they all meaningless? The sacrifices I made in the name of holiness, the disciplines I practiced to keep the shadow at bay, were they all meaningless? And love replies, no, never meaningless. But they were meaningful because they led you to this. They were the footsteps of a child learning to walk away from herself. Discipline, virtue, sacrifice. They served their purpose as long as you believed you were separate from me. Discipline, virtue, sacrifice. They served their purpose. But the moment you see the lamp, the moment you recognize the origin of the shadow, all fighting ceases. You're not asked to perfect the shadow. You're asked to step out of its way, not to defeat it, but to disappear it by letting me shine through. All right, so we're not, and this, I also feel like um, the ego, we're not asked to defeat it, but just to set it on the side and letting Christ shine through. Soul says, but I was told to confront it, that I must face my demons, look them in the eye, integrate the shadow as part of my wholeness. to confront it, to face my demons? And love replies, yes. And that was needed for a time. But that was the language of reason, offering the soul a map until it was ready to abandon all maps. You see, integration was never about adding the shadow to the higher self. It was about seeing that neither were real apart from light. And that's what came to me, when we read um, Age of the Heart, they talked about how Age of the Reason prepared us for this time. And now we're told to abandon all the maps. Your demons were never real foes. They were gestures made in darkness. Once the light enters, they are not defeated. They are forgotten. Wow. So when we allow the light, all of our perceived demons are forgotten. So Soul says, so the battle was a mercy that was never meant to last. Love says, exactly. Every struggle, every holy war of the self with the self was part of the dream of becoming. But I do not become, sweet soul. I am, and now so are you. Wow. I do not become. I am, love says. Um, the satsang yesterday, he talked about thinking in and the power of um, allowing yourself to just seep into this beautiful consciousness, this Christ consciousness. And I should know his name right off the bat, but I will tell you in a minute. The memory is not there. It just is like a sieve. It's in and it's out. Rastal, Rastal. He goes by one name. Deepening the framework. Direct attention to go deeper, to notice what's going on, and to just keep deepening in. Sinking in allows you the skill to do it whenever. You can set an alarm and do it every hour if you want. And what was interesting to me is he said, notice the resistance, because it's not the enemy. The resistance is telling you what still needs to be deepened, what still needs to be let go, what still needs to be shifted. And he said he took on a different tone with the gratitude. He said, in gratitude, say, I'm glad you're here for me to see. Just to help us move on. So Soul says, then what happens when others still fight with their shadows? Then what happens when others still fight their shadows? When I see someone swinging wildly, trying to overcome the very illusions I now see through, how do I love them, knowing what they're fighting isn't real? What they're fighting isn't real, and it's learning forgiveness. Father, forgive them for hurting themselves. Thy will be done, Lord. Help us to see. Love replies, you do not correct their punches. You do not mock their fight. You do not step in their new shadow. Again, the Course says, I need do nothing. You do not correct their punches. You do not mock their fight. You do not step in as their new shadow. You stand behind them as the light, patient, quiet, unyielding. Here we go again with the silence. I'm going to read that quote. In quietness are all things answered, and is every problem quietly resolved. But see, life tells me, oh no, then you're a doormat. Oh no, you can't just be silent. But here it is again. You stand behind them as the light, patient, quiet, unyielding. And one day, when their arms grow tired, when their fists fall in surrender, they may feel your warmth behind them and wonder why the shadow no longer strikes back. This is how love teaches, by being, not by proving, by presence, not performance. Wow, let that sink in. You stand behind them as the light, patient, quiet, unyielding. This is how love teaches, by being, not by proving, by presence, not by performance. And this kind of goes back to what Joel Goldsmith was saying. You're not praying for things and people. Oh my goodness, that's all I do. I have a whole list of my prayers. But my bottom line is thy will be done. Because at this point, I don't know what the needs are. I don't even know what my needs are. So all I have to do is be presence. Soul says, it's so gentle and so unfamiliar. I thought enlightenment would be a grand triumph, but this feels like falling asleep in the arms of someone I didn't even know was holding me. Again, a beautiful image. Falling asleep in the arms of someone I didn't even know was holding me, because Christ is holding us, even when we don't feel it. And love says, that is because awakening in truth is the end of every war, even the war to awaken. It is not a trumpet blast on a mountaintop. It is the sound of your last breath of resistance. The last breath of resistance. It is a softness so complete that even your need to be awake is gone. You are not awake to me. You are awake as me. You are awake as love. So soul replies, then I no longer fear disappearing. I no longer need to leave a mark. Even the story of the boy and his shadow begins to fade. How sweet, right? No longer need to leave a mark. Excuse me. I no longer need to think that there's something that I have to accomplish. I have to do. I have to fight for my rights. I have to have my opinion voiced. I no longer need to leave a mark. So love replies. It may fade, or it may remain as a kindness for another child, boxing ghosts in the basement of becoming. Wow, when you think about this, you think about James being set on this path so early. Either way, you are free now. Free not because you have won, but because you've stopped pretending that there was anything to win. Come now, soul, let us walk together into the day, not as two, not even as one, but as no one at all. So here's the invitation right now to all of us. Come now, let us walk together into the day, not as two or three or four, not even as one, but as no one at all. And this is all in the italics. I love that you have this up, Lynn. And then the soul closed his eyes and felt a dream descend upon his mind, like a veil separating two worlds. A scene appeared, soft and transparent, of the soul sitting at a kitchen table as sunlight spills across a worn wooden floor. A friend enters, shoulders heavy, eyes tired. This one, well, still tangled in the shadow, speaks. So now we have someone else coming in to speak. Here's the friend. The friend says, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Every day it's the same. I wake up with this ache in my chest like something's wrong with me, and I can't even name it. I try to pray, but I'm just talking to myself. I try to be better, but I keep failing. It feels like I'm frightening something I can't even see, and I'm so tired. Sound familiar? I try to be better, but I keep failing. It feels like I'm fighting something I can't even see, and I'm so tired. Soul, embodying love, replies, yes, you are tired because you've been very brave, brave enough to fight what was never fighting you. And now you are nearly ready to stop. And here we are, ready to stop. We're ready to give up that ache in our heart. For me, it was like a broken heart, ready to give it up. That ache that there's something wrong with me that I don't even know. I keep trying to be better and better and forgive, and I feel like I'm still fighting and failing. So soul replies, and now you're ready to stop. Hi, Bob. So friend responds, stop? Stop what? I'm just barely holding things together. If I stop, everything will fall apart. Oh, this just feels so real. If I stop, everything will fall apart. Will I know who I am? Soul says, no, dear one. If you stop, everything that's not real will fall apart, and what remains will not need holding. It will hold you. Let me tell you something. When I was a child, my father taught me to box by having me fight my own shadow. I didn't know back then it felt real enough. But no matter how hard I struck, the shadow hit back just as far. And when I blocked, it blocked. I didn't know that I had placed myself between the light and the wall. I didn't know that I was casting the very thing I feared. Oh my goodness, this is such great imagery. The shadow hit back just as fast because I was fighting my own shadow. And when I blocked, it blocked. I didn't know that I had placed myself between the light and the wall. Our own blocks, our own fears, our own shadows. And friend replies, you're saying I'm fighting myself? And soul says, you are fighting what you think you are. You believe this ache must be fixed, that the shadow must be healed, that the one is hurting must become worthy. but none of that is necessary. You believe the ache must be fixed, the shadow must be healed, and the one who is hurting must become worthy, instead of just realizing that this is grace and that we are love. But none of that is necessary. Soul says the light behind you is already shining, and when you turn around, when you stop trying to win, you'll see there was nothing. There was never anything to win. Wow. There was never a fight. It was an imaginary light that was blocked. So friend replies, but if I stop fighting, won't I just collapse? Won't I disappear? And soul says, yes. You will collapse into grace. You will disappear into truth. Sorry. And you will not miss yourself when you're gone. Wow. You will just disappear into truth and you won't miss yourself when you're gone. You'll still do the dishes, still hold your children, still answer emails, and laugh at jokes. But something will have fallen away. The one who is pretending to be needed. So we'll still carry on, but there will be a difference. Something will have fallen away. So friend says, and you, what will happen to your ache? And soul says, it dissolved when I stopped defending it. It was never a wound. It was the pressure of the light trying to break through. Wow. It was the pressure of the light trying to break through. Now I walk with nothing. I live with nothing. And yet I have never loved more purely than I do now. And isn't that our goal? To love purely? And then friend replies, I don't know how to do that. And soul says, you don't have to. You don't need a method. You just need to stop refusing what's already happening. Let the ache ache. Let the fear rise. Let it all unfold without trying to bind it. And when the last thread of resistance breaks, you will not find nothing. You will find me with a capital M, right where I've always been. And friend says, you don't sound like you're speaking from yourself anymore. And soul smiling says, I'm not. You don't need a method. You don't need to stop refusing what's already happening. Let the ache ache. Let the fear rise. Let the resistance unfold. Now we're on chapter 9. The fight finally ends. Soul replies, there's something I still can't shake, love. Now I realize that the shadow self has no real substance or power, but there's a part of me that worries I might miss the battle. Does that make any sense at all? It's as if I've grown attached to my own struggle. There's a strange clarity in the battle, a sense of identity. Who am I if I'm no longer wrestling with darkness, even if I know it is an illusion? Who am I? I've grown attached to my own struggle. So this is love's answer. Ah, sweet love, it's common for the warrior to miss the battlefield. Even when the war is revealed as an illusion, even when the enemy is seen as your own silhouette, there's comfort in motion. There's comfort in noise. There's something reassuring about being against something. Something reassuring. Shadow boxing gave you a frame. Now you float, undefined, unmapped. unresisting. And that, to the part of you still clinging to identity, feels like death. But this is a holy death. The one who needed contrast in order to feel real is beginning to fade. You thought the struggle gave your life meaning. I tell you, it only delayed your life from truly beginning. So we thought the struggle gave our life meaning, but in reality, it only delayed the truth. You know, we go back to it's just the ego death. And maybe it's not a total death like the ego is so afraid of. Maybe it's a change in the paradigm. Soul replies, then why did I hold on to it for so long? Why did I keep stepping between the light and the wall again and again, knowing each time that the shadow would return? Why do I keep doing this to myself, right? The question, why am I holding on for so long? Why am I so afraid to just let go? Let go and let God. Love replies, because you believe the fight would make you worthy of peace. You believed you had to earn rest, but rest is your original condition. You placed the lamp behind you, thinking its purpose was to train you for battle, not realizing it was really calling you to turn around and see the light. And let me tell you something else, something few are willing to hear. Your shadow, the one you feared, analyzed, and tried to redeem, was never your enemy. It was your mirror. It showed you everything you believed you were. When you loved it, it softened. But when you resisted, it grew claws. But it was always a servant of love, of the light. I'm sorry, it was always a servant of the light, teaching you until you were ready to see what stood behind. So this is bringing up the images of the projector in the movie theater. You know, that projecting that light. And and also Michael Singer. Michael Singer turned around to look and see the light. You know, that's what he kept telling us. And even Regina, when she used that little clay stick figure, you know, she physically showed us how to turn around and look at ourselves. Are we ready to hear your shadow, the one you feared, analyzed, and tried to redeem, was never your enemy? It was your mirror. It showed you everything you believed you were. When you loved it, it softened. But when you resisted, it grew claws. But it was always a servant of the light. It just projected whatever emotion or feeling I put out on it. It was never my enemy. Soul replies, so what happens now? If I no longer fight the shadow, no longer fear it, do I just live in stillness? Love says, no, beloved, you live in flow. Now that you're no longer distracted by the illusion of opposition, you can finally pour. We're no longer distracted by the illusion of opposition. You become you become water. You become like water, clear, formless, obedient to gravity and grace. You speak when words come, you move when the movement calls for you to move. And yes, sometimes the shadow still flickers, but you do not flinch. You do not return to the ring. You simply remember there is nothing there. There is only the light behind me. Only the light is real. All right, that's my lesson right now. Can I just give up the argument because I don't want to return to the false illusion? There's nothing there. There is only light behind me. Only the light is real. Soul replies, then I will walk forward, not to prove anything, not to win, but to live without resistance. And I can feel the whole change in my attitude because I was upset before. I was angry before. I was ready for a fight. And then I hear Goldsmith telling us to forgive. And then I come here and I'm reading this. Yeah, there's nothing to prove, there's nothing to win, but to live without resistance. And love replies, yes. And when others come to you with bruised knuckles from their own shadow boxing, you will not correct them. You will not fight on their behalf. You will simply shine behind them until they too are ready to turn. We'll just wait in that quietness, the silence, the peace. You will not fight at all. You'll simply shine. And Soul says, what if I turn around and look directly into the light? And Love says, tell me what you think will happen. Shall we think ourselves first? What'll happen if I turn directly and look into the light before we find out what Soul's reply is? What will I see? Will I be surprised? Will I see my own guilt? My own unworthiness? Will I see my life flash ahead of, flash in front of me? What will I see if I turn around and look directly into the light? And Love says, tell me what you think will happen. And here's what Soul says. It seems to me that my reliance on shadowy figures projected onto the wall vanishes when I turn and see the light that casts them. The shadows only have power as long as I believe they're real. As soon as I see them for what they are, nothing, their power disappears. Am I getting close, love? So Soul is showing us that the projection on the wall vanishes as we turn around and see the light that casts them. They have no truth anymore. The shadows are only what I believed, the false beliefs. They're nothing. And that makes their power disappear. That's what I've been hearing over and over again. Where am I placing my attention? If I'm placing my attention on the illusion, then of course the illusion's going to grow. If I'm placing my attention on consciousness, on the Christ, on love, then that is going to grow. So Love replies, yes, beloved, you are not just close. You are at the very threshold. You are brushing the veil with your fingertips. The moment you look directly into the light, you no longer seek to understand shadows. You no longer define yourself by contrast. You stop being the one who needs rescuing and become the one who has never needed anything at all. The shadow begins to tremble, not because it is evil, but because it is ephemeral. It depends on your forgetfulness to exist. You are beginning to remember, and so the shadow becomes lost. Soul replies, then all my suffering, all my battles were never against something that existed, only against my own misperception. All my suffering, all my battles were never against something that existed. Oh, this goes so against mind, right? It's just like, wow. Mind-boggling. Love answers, yes. But do not grieve that. Do not see your struggle as wasted. The shadow was a teacher, a faithful companion until you were ready to see what was beyond it. It taught you longing. It taught you humility. It taught you the ache that finally turned you back toward the light. So bless the shadow, even as you leave it. It was never your enemy, only your echo. And I had a quote that I wanted to share about humility. Let's see if I can find what I did with it. I don't want to say it from memory. My problem, I started different notebooks, and now I don't know which notebook is which. Ah, Um, it was something about humility is thinking about yourself. True humility is thinking about yourself less. False humility is thinking about yourself. True humility is thinking of yourself less. And that was by Jeff Cavins from Hallow. So let's go back. Uh-oh. I think I. All right, let's see. But what happens to me when I stare into the light? Um, okay, here we are. It was never your enemy, only your echo. Did I read that? Okay, I'm going to go back to love. Do not grieve that. Do not see your struggle as wasted. The shadow was a teacher, a faithful companion until you were ready to see what was beyond it. It taught you longing. It taught you humility. It taught you the ache that finally turned you back toward the light. So bless the shadow, even as you leave it. It was never your enemy, only your echo. Um, and then saying like that movie, Fight Club, which I didn't see, so I don't know. But you're welcome to tell us more if you want, Lynn. Soul says, but what happens to me when I stare into the light? It feels like I'll be burned, consumed, not in punishment, but in purity. Will there be anything left of me? Isn't that interesting to think? That's what'll happen. We'll be purified. And love replies, there will be nothing left of what you believed you were, and everything will remain of what you truly are. You will not be destroyed, dear one. You will be disrobed. The layers will fall. The layer that clung to suffering, the layer that needed to be needed, the layer that whispered you were broken. All these layers will fall. What remains will be the unspeakable simple, a gaze that no longer turns, a heart that no longer divides, a silence that sings without sound, a gaze that no longer turns, a heart that no longer divides, and a silence that sings without sound. And Soul replies, then may I dare to look now, even if I tremble, even if I weep. Think this is so real. Think of that fear that sets in, that trembling. It goes so deep. And love replies, yes, trembling is holy. Tears are a final form of prayer. You may look now, you must, for all shadows are beginning to fade, not just from the wall, but from your memory. And when your eyes adjust, you will not find me waiting as something other. You will find that you and I were never two. You will see that you have always been this light, this flame, this radiant nothingness. The trembling is holy, and the tears are the final form of prayer. And I can remember someone saying, you know, when you heard something or spoke something and it brought up tears, that's because it was truth for you. You must look at all the shadows that are beginning to fade, and here again, let them go. Don't cling to them. Don't hold on. And Soul quietly says, then I will turn. I will let the shadows fall behind me like old clothes. I will not study them. I will not fear them. It's almost like an affirmation, right? I will not fear them. I will turn. I will look. And I will see, not as the seeker, but as the seen, not as the eye, but as the light itself. And in parentheses, as the soul turns towards the light, it hesitates, then turns back to love. This is what we keep doing. We keep going just so far and then thinking, no, we can't. No, I can't. And I turn back. There's a hesitation. Soul says, if I am this light, as you say, then why do I still feel moments of darkness? Why do I flinch even after seeing what is true? Is this a failure to remain awake? Or is it just part of being here, part of the illusion? And love replies, no, dear one, it is not failure, it is tenderness. Even after turning to the light, the echo of the shadow may pass through you, not because it is real, but because compassion still lives in your soft form. You flinch, not because you were blind, but because you remember what it felt like to be blind. You feel darkness, not because it has returned, but because your heart has widened to include even those still dreaming. Wow. You feel darkness because your heart has widened to include even those still dreaming. You are not being tested. You are being opened. Even this ache is holy. Soul replies, but shouldn't the fear be gone by now? Shouldn't the peace you promised be permanent? And love reassures, the peace is permanent, but it is not always felt. Peace is permanent, but we don't always feel it. Just as the sun is constant behind the clouds, so is your union with me behind every passing mood, every twitch of fear. You have mistaken feeling the peace for being the peace. Now you are learning to let feelings rise and fall without claiming them as true or making a home for them in your soul. Whoa. Think about that. Um, you have mistaken the feeling of peace for being peace. Now you are learning to let the feelings rise and fall without claiming them as true or making a home for them in your soul. So we're no longer giving attention to that fear. We're just staying in that peace. This is not regression. This is refinement. Soul replies, then I don't have to fix it. I don't have to resist the waves when they come. Love says, no, beloved. Let the waves come. Let them rise. Let them crash. Let them foam and vanish into shore. You are not the one drowning anymore. You are the ocean. Let your flinching be tender. Let your ache be prayer. Let your compassion be vast enough to welcome even the illusion of separation without being fooled by it. Oh, I like that line. Let your ache be a prayer. Let your compassion be vast enough to welcome even the illusion of separation without being fooled by it. So keep sinking in, knowing that the peace is there, knowing that I can go back and give my attention to the peace. Soul replies, so the light I am doesn't fight the darkness. It holds it, watches it pass, and then shines on. Our heart has widened to include even those still dreaming, because this is our purpose. This is why we are here, to surrender to this experience of boundless love and absolute God-given divinity. Love says, yes, it shines and shines and shines, not because the darkness is gone, but because it was never changed by it. That is the peace that cannot be disturbed. That is you, even now. Here, beloved soul, is a poem that might help you to remember. I am the light behind the wall. I rise when shadows start to fall. I do not flinch. I do not fight. I shine. I rest. I am the light. This fear will pass. This wave will fade. No self to fix. No self to save. I am the stillness, deep and wide. Love is my home, and love my guide. And that brings us to the end of chapter 9, which I will stop here. But I want to read that poem again. This is a poem that love is giving us to remember, because the light shines and shines and shines, and the darkness doesn't change it at all. The peace cannot be disturbed. It's always there. So here we go. I am the light behind the wall. I rise when shadows start to fall. I do not flinch. I do not fight. I shine. I rest. I am the light. This fear will pass. This wave will fade. No need to fix. No self to save. I am the stillness, deep and wide. Love is my home, and love is my guide. Wow, even if and Lynn's joining in. That's why Jesus came and stayed. Yeah. And that's why he gave us communion, for the union, to remind us after 2,000 years. You can't change something that he put there as a way to remind us that he is in communion with us always. But I like this last line, and I think it's going to be a motto for a while. Love is my home, and love my guide. Love is my home and love my guide. To remember that constantly. Love is my home. There's always a peace here. No matter what emotion starts arising, I can always look back at peace and know the peace that is beyond understanding. Even when I get caught up, see, that's part of the problem. I think I had the false belief that when you hit this joy, when you awaken, that you just enjoy all the time, that you don't have all these other emotions. But as I learned, that's not true. The emotions still come, but they just don't overtake, because you know that there's a higher purpose and that you can keep choosing to go higher and higher. As Connie used to say, you can choose column A over column B. I can see column B. This is where my anger is. This is where my resentment is. But I don't have to accept it. I can choose again. And that's a beautiful message and a beautiful way to end. So Lynn, I will give this back to you. Thank you so much for being here and joining in.
Thank you so much, Lin Castaldo. Beautiful.